Committee. My name is Martin Brooks. I'm chair of the committee. This is what is termed a quasi-judicial meeting, which means that members of the council sitting on this committee sit not as ward councillors, but as representatives of the council as a whole. No decisions have been made by members before this meeting, and only members who've completed the mandatory training are able to vote. And I would confirm that all members of this committee have undertaken the mandatory training. We've also got people here who've stated that they wish to speak on a planning application. We deal with applications on an area basis, and I'll introduce those people at the relevant time. Just to remind those people that your contribution should be limited to 3 minutes. Can I also remind everyone present to switch off your mobile phones and remind councillors that you don't enjoy parliamentary privilege, so please be aware of that when speaking. So we're on to item 1 of the agenda, which is to notify people that today's meeting is being filmed and live streamed on the web. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do I see anyone wanting to declare a declaration of interest? Councillor Barry.
I've got two interests. First of all, I'm a board member of the Sutton Coldfield Business Improvement District. There is an application in the bid area, but it is not being discussed at any of the meetings, and I've not expressed with you on that. Secondly, I'm a member of the executive group in Warming and Minworth Ward, which deals with Langley, but the purpose of that is to get information to residents and allow them to express their views. So I've not expressed any view on anything we will see today.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Yeah, with regard to item 7, I am declaring that I am a season ticket holder at Aston Villa Football Club. However, I have no pecuniary interest whatsoever with the club, and as per mandatory training, I will look at every application without prejudice.
So, Martin.
Application 7, I'm a member of the Aston Villa Supporters Trust, which is independent of the club, and I'm also a season ticket holder at the club. I recently met with the Aston Villa Foundation in my role as a local councillor, but that's, I'll say it's my role as a local councillor. I'll take part in the debate as per the mandatory training.
Thank you, Chair. In respect of item 9, it's in my ward, and I have been contacted by a number of residents and community groups in relation to it, but I've not expressed any opinion on.
Very much. So, any further declarations? Being none, can I move to item 3? Apologies. I think apologies from Councillor Moledina. Chair's announcements. I don't have any. Item 5 are the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of December. Is it agreed that they're signed as a correct record of that meeting? Thank you very much. Item 6, we're on to planning applications for the northwest area. So the first application is item report number 6 in respect of the former Roses nightclub, Sutton Coldfield. Can I ask for officers' updates on this report?
Thank you, Chair. We do have updates on this. A small typographical error is included at 3.1 of the officer's report. This should refer to 75 flats, not 55. A further comment has been received from Our Town local interest group, referencing a design concept for the Red Rose site, and that it was not mentioned in the officer's report as it would be relevant to the deliberations of the committee and the intention of a planning brief for the site. I've been advised by colleagues in the development planning team that the document referred to is a discussion document that holds no planning weight. Nevertheless, elements of the discussion document were incorporated into the adopted town centre master plan. A planning brief is in draft form and will be utilised as and when appropriate. Finally, further comments have been received from Royal Sutton Coldfield Town Council, expressing concerns that their comments have not been sufficiently considered in the officer's report, particularly that the report fails to properly represent the critical concerns of the Town Council with regard to the site context and impact of the proposed development, and how the proposal would actively prejudice the delivery of a high-quality comprehensive scheme for the Red Rose Centre area. Furthermore, the Town Council objected to the assertion in the report that the proposed height of the building is consistent with the guidance set out in the Town Centre Master Plan SPD. I'm satisfied that these comments have been considered in the assessment of the proposals and responded to within the report at paragraph 7.1 to 7.8. The suggestion made by the Town Council that development would actively prejudice the delivery of a high-quality comprehensive scheme for the Red Rose area is considered to be addressed by the Master Plan, supporting a phased approach, of which this application should be seen as the first phase. The applicant has submitted parameter plans to demonstrate how the scheme would work with future land assembly and the wider regeneration of the site.
Thank you very much. We have public speakers registered on this report. I've got Steve Lyne, who's a local resident, and then Jonathan Cox, the applicant. So, Mr. Lyne, you've got 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Good morning. I represent our town and Eco Sutton in Sutton Coldfield. This is the first significant development to be recommended for approval since the adoption of the 2020 Master Plan as supplementary policy guidance. It is therefore an important test of the detailed commitments now standing as BCC planning policy. Sutton Town Council have objected to the proposal because it does not comply with the Master Plan SPD. Our town and Eco Sutton agree with this position. Also, as far as we are aware, unlike Aldi on Brassington Avenue, the site has no constraining planning history. We consider BCC would likely win an appeal against refusal. This is a virgin site where it would be expected an exemplary proposal would be submitted to set a benchmark others will follow and establish limits on building heights. Also, we read in the Town Centre Regeneration Partnership minutes of the 18th of December that a development brief for Red Rose Centre has been drafted. This will be pursued when discussions are completed with long-term leaseholders within the Red Rose Centre. Given these facts and timing, our town, Eco Sutton, are surprised at the planning officer's recommendation to approve. It is a decision that appears unhelpful. Our town, Eco Sutton, consider it is unlikely Bordeaux will themselves develop. Most likely, it is a site valuation uplift. However, the consequences for the regeneration of this quarter will likely be major. Approving this application will make regenerating the Red Rose Centre more uncertain, prolonged and expensive. The wishful thinking expressed in your report of introducing ambitious architecture is not the issue. Sustainable regeneration based on adaptive reuse is the issue. There is no evidence that this will act as a catalyst for other developments in the town centre to come forward. Far more likely, it will hinder and prolong regeneration of the Red Rose environs. In supporting Sutton Town Council, our town, Eco Sutton, are seeking long-term green proposals.
1 minute left.
Which we detailed in our adaptive reuse design concept for the declining Red Rose Centre, prepared and presented to a BCC team led by Rebecca Farr on Friday the 19th of March 2021, though unmentioned in your officer's report. This is a bad, non-compliant proposal that sets back sustainable regeneration. We urge members of this committee to reject this inadequate application.
Thank you, Mr. Lyne. Can I invite Mr. Cox, the applicant, to address the committee?
Yeah. Morning, Chairman and committee. I'm Jonathan Cox, the director of the applicant Bordeaux Estates, a locally based company with an extensive track record in urban regeneration projects. We purchased the subject site in the summer of 2020 following its demolition. Since that time, we've been actively engaged with your officers with a view to developing an exciting project which would comply with and give a kickstart to the implementation of the Sutton Coldfield Master Plan as adopted by the City Council as SPD in May 2021. In the run-up to the adoption and the 19 months since, we've developed together a package of proposals, planning conditions and obligations that demonstrate our commitment to and the faith in Sutton Coldfield, which can act as a catalyst to the much needed regeneration of the town centre. As set out in the officer's report, we feel the proposals before you achieve this, creating a highly sustainable development which would act as an initial phase of the wider redevelopment of the Red Rose Centre area. We've confirmed we would work with the council both as planning authority and as local adjoining landowner to ensure that the two sites are brought forward in a positive and coordinated manner in line with and delivering the aspirations of the city council's master plan. The granting of an outline planning permission would be an important milestone in this process, and I commend it to you. I think the officer's report comprehensively deals with the various detailed issues relating to the application, so I will not take up any further of your valuable time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Can I bring the officer back for comments before I throw it up to members for debate?
Yes, so regarding the Virgin site, it is previously developed land and is identified within the master plan as part of Site G for comprehensive regeneration. As I mentioned in my update, this should be seen as a first phase. There are issues of and the readiness of other sites in respect of regenerating the whole area. In terms of the sustainability concerns mentioned by the objector, an outline energy strategy has been submitted with the outline planning application alongside information regarding sustainable construction within the design and access statement. Conditions have been recommended to be attached to any grant of planning permission, which would require further work to be undertaken at the reserve matters stage to ensure that sustainability measures are adhered to. Else I've covered in my updates and the report, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's now before the committee for discussion. Councillor Deakin.
Yeah. Whilst I'm disappointed in the, in my view, the poor levels of affordable housing, I am mindful for the application and would move that we see recommendations.
Councillor Barry. Basically, to support this application, I think there's an awful lot to recommend it. It's bringing residences to the centre of the town. It's bringing business in there. It's got excellent communication links, bus. It's got train station. It's got all these things going for it. It's on a site which has been a long-term blot on the landscape in Sutton Coldfield. And I do see it as an opportunity, a catalyst for development, because it's an enormous vote of confidence by developers that the centre of Sutton Coldfield has indeed a future. And to be honest, I see no evidence that it would get in the way of the Red Rose Centre itself being developed, and frankly, it needs it quite badly. So I'm fully in favour of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. I think all of us would agree that Sutton Coldfield is in need. Its town centre is in massive need of regeneration. The brownfield site has been left vacant for some time now and is in major need of some work doing to it. So, in principle, I have no issue with the application. It accords with the master plan. As far as I can see, it doesn't hinder any future redevelopment of the town centre. So, given its fine, more than happy to support it on that basis. The one caveat I would have, and I appreciate appearance is a reserved matter, so that's to come at a later date, but the indicative images within there do not keep in mind its prominent location and its proximity to the continent. When the reserved matters comes forward, that the design is substantially improved from the indicative images.
Some more. Any other questions or comments?
People of a certain age, which I include myself, Roses is probably the place to go when you turn 18. But back to the application. We all want to thrive in town centre in Sutton, and we need to build more homes. But the more people that live in the town centre, the more footfall there will be. which I think will help revive the town centre. Flats have got excellent public transport links and should act as a catalyst for the future regeneration. So I'll be supporting this application.
Any other questions or comments? I'll bring the officer back and then I'll put it to the vote.
I think the only, excuse me. I think the only comment to respond to is Councillor Morse regarding the appearance. We have encouraged, we have expressed some concerns, and we have encouraged the applicant to engage in detailed pre-application discussions prior to the submission of reserved matters, which would allow officers, planning officers and city design officers to collaborate on that design to ensure that we do secure a scheme that warrants this prominent position in terms of its design appearance and architectural quality.
Actually say that the comments that Councillor Moore made, I think, are ones that will be supported across the committee, actually, and hopefully we will see something positive coming back under reserved matters. Can I put the recommendations to you in paragraph 9 of the report? All those in favour? Votes in favour. There are no votes against. That is carried. So the application is supported with the 31 conditions in the report. Thank you very much. The next report we're going to take is the report on Aston Villa Football Club. Just waiting for the officer to get established, and then we'll move on now.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. As my boys keep singing around the house, Feliz Navidad, or season's greetings to you all. Two updates to report to members. Firstly, at paragraph 7.8 in your report, the acceptable uses within the proposed new North Stand Villa Live are set out with the relevant use class orders, and these are listed. The list should be updated to include use class order use EE. This was omitted in error, and for clarity, use EE is listed with the text of condition 37, which sets out limits and defines the acceptable uses within the development. And just for clarity, use EE is the provision of medical or health services, except the use of premises attached to the residence, residence of a consultant or practitioner. This use is considered to be acceptable, relevant, and appropriate to the development in its context, with regards to the location of the development and consideration of adjoining residential amenity. Turning to the second update, since the publication of the committee report, a representation has been received from Transport for the West Midlands. Transport for the West Midlands welcome the application, note and appreciate its significance. They broadly agree with the transport proposals and measures outlined, and feel more could be done to reduce car usage and promote sustainable travel modes, which I would say to members the future master plan and travel plans will and should capture. Transport for West Midlands stressed that all measures should aim to achieve a change in spectator travel habits away from use of the private car, improve walking and cycling routes, greater promotion and awareness of public transport options, and they asked to be included in these. I can confirm to members within the scope of conditions, Transport for West Midlands would be a consultee on the discharge of relevant conditions. To summarise, Transport for West Midlands are considered an important stakeholder and consultee going forward, both with, as outlined, the discharge conditions and future potential phases of development at Villa Park and the Euro 2028 bid, and delivering the aims and objectives of the emerging area master plan. Their comments are noted and considered against the council's assessment of the proposals, and the comments received from our own transportation officers, Highways England and the Mayor. Accordingly, the proposals are considered acceptable with highway terms, and the proposals will facilitate betterment over the existing situation, promote and facilitate sustainable transport, help foster a change in patterns of behaviour. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Straight to members for comments and questions. Councillor Marsham.
Thank you, Chair. Villa Park's expansion plans are exciting, and I think it's a really strong design. A louder stadium will hopefully inspire football success and continue to showcase our city across the globe. I think it's a shame that the club is not a real living wage employer. If you can pay players 100k a week, You can afford to pay match day staff £10.90 an hour. But the two issues with the application, transport and parking. Local residents will welcome Villa's support to consult on controlled parking zones. Too many feel trapped by poorly parked cars on match days. What we now need is for our West Midlands Mayor to run more reliable trains to both Aston and Wiston stations. There's too many fans feel like they have to drive because they have no other option. But from a planning point of view, there's no strong argument to reject this application.
Mr. Payne.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Councillor Marsden said, in principle, the application is great. It's great for the city as bringing in, for Euro 28, bringing people in for that. Again, my concern is around the transport. As I've already stated, I regularly go to the ground. I regularly use public transport, which at the moment is inadequate. On the pre-briefing, I asked a question regarding public transport, and the answer I was given was concerning because I was told that they would suspend buses running for an hour after the game, which doesn't really make sense. We need to have more public transport to clear the fans from the ground. If we're going to put another 7,000 fans in, we do need to make sure that public transport is adequate and we are removing the cars from parking on resident streets and also putting in some kind of park and ride to keep the cars away from the ground area. That's what I'd like to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Don't particularly follow football in any respects, but I know the importance of Aston Villa to the city, the stadium. Therefore, I'm broadly supportive of the proposal to generate that to make it a much better to enjoy. But I am concerned about its impact, particularly as we've talked about. Yeah, it's always been touched on the parking issues in the local area, but also the sheer strain that's placed on public transport. And I mean, I've not been to Aston Villa by heading to the city centre by train. And when you stop at the station, it's wall to wall people trying to get on, and it just cannot cope. Having an extra 7 hours on does give me real concerns as to whether the public transport network can sustain it. Now, there's lots of things talked in the report that can be done to alleviate that. I'm broadly supportive. I'd rather that be done now, not after the new stand becomes available and the capacity is increased, because there's an issue now and it's going to get worse. So I know the academy in place by the end of development, but I would rather these be put in now, particularly talking like rather than be put at the end because there's an issue now. He'll ask on this if we're to approve it is to try and push them to implement
What's it the same?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Right, principally, the sport is an application, I think, Brent Gaffney working to the do have some concerns, when we had this briefing meeting some time now, we were told that they can be closing the recent road from line, Aston line. If you do that, then I think there's going to be some traffic problem there, and shoppers and residents would not like that because it's a man bus route. And also, increasing the capacity of this across. What region you're taking to deal with the parking issue? Because resident is fighting. It's got a very heavily populated area. And what the mayor is taking to deal with that issue? Thank you.
Yeah, I support the application, but I echo what everybody else said. I know what it's like to be stuck in your car for an hour and a half after a game, So I think we really need to look into the issues of parking because I think it's going to be quite horrendous. But what I would say is that this particular ground has long needed investment. I think it's as Councillor Marsham has said, it's very exciting. Particularly looking forward to seeing the new Villa Live part of the development. We do need more capacity at the ground. I'm sorry that it's going to create issues, but as somebody trying to get a season ticket, I personally think, it's about time that we develop capacity. parking issues is going to be quite substantial. But if we can go around them, I think it's going to be a fantastic development for not just for the area, local area, but for the city.
Thank you. Councillor Muntas has saying.
I'm the councillor for Aston Ward, and I have a lot of residents contact me about parking issues that they have already. So I think it will be a big problem when they expand the capacity. I think what my colleague here was saying about having a system where you can have buses come from other areas, and that would be really good. But I also think that they need to tell the residents as well, because what's happened recently is Aston Villa have built a stadium. I think it's like a training thing behind Tame Road, and I've had residents there complaining that they were informed about it. So I really think that the residents in Aston need to be informed about this planning, at least a mile radius. I think people need to know, because at the end of the day, when it's gone through, and then we'll have the residents contacting us, and then we councillors have to end up picking up the pieces. So I think residents really need to know, not just like a sign saying that we don't know what's going to happen, but I think the residents need to know about it.
Questions or comments?
Not unexpected comments really focusing around transport issues on match day. I think the starting point really in addressing everything that members has raised, at the moment you have effectively in terms of planning an unconstrained situation. There are no real planning controls based around the ground. So we have the situation we've got now. And the club is aware and is actively wanting to remedy the situation. Starting in reverse then, in terms of what can we do right now, the club is actually already committing to run additional supporters buses now, but regardless of this application, and that's something they're looking to implement provisionally in January. So already the club is front and centre with that, with additional bus services to and from the ground. In terms of the controlled parking zone, the club is committed to financing consultation on that in areas around the ground. Part of the overall package of measures here is looking to try and enact a modal shift in fan behaviour. So, for example, if 1% of supporters arrive by bicycle, that's 500 people they're moved out of their. So these 1% incremental shifts in behaviour, which will take time to develop over time, help and alleviate the situation, but obviously tying with wider council objectives in terms of sustainability and travel patterns. The club's also committed to creating a travel officer post within its setup. So issues that members, residents may have can report directly back to a specific officer within the club. That person will also be a key point of contact going forward with the likes of Transport for West Midlands, bus companies and so forth. You'll see in the conditions a travel plan condition that relates to match day and event days. And within that gives us the opportunity to both enact measures, but also trial some measures. So I heard concern about buses being cancelled. That, as far as I'm aware, has never been suggested. What has been suggested is potentially closing roads that aren't currently closed post-match. What the travel plan can allow is us to trial that maybe on a singular match or a free match basis to see, is that an effective measure or not? Because obviously we don't want to enact measures on match day that make the problem worse or, proverbially move it downstream and create a problem elsewhere. So within the travel plan, there is a sort of a loop system to trial things, have feedback, engage with local members, the community, Transport for West Midlands, bus groups and so on to try and effect active improvements within the area that aren't physical interventions. In terms of the uplifting in crowd, it's just over the 7,000. That in itself, taken with the measures in place with the proposal, such as Villa Live, will soften that post-match curve in terms of the rush from the ground to things like Witton Station, car parks and so forth, and will hold people back. That's an effective measure that's been seen at places like Twickenham, which has a very comparable situation. You have a large stadium in a primarily residential area with let's be honest, same as Twickenham at Witton, a stadium that isn't really fit for a match day purpose. But those events post-game, other measures such as the shuttle buses, help make that overall run more smoothly. So we're confident that this uplift here, without the significant transport interventions at a phase 2, phase 3, or hopefully a Euro 2028 successful bid, would see be delivered. In terms of parking, again, this comes back into modal shift. What the club is looking to do, and it's outlined in the report, is acquire on a basic tenancy basis, best way of explaining it, potential land opportunities within the area just to lease on match days for off-site parking, so it alleviates on-road parking problems. And just finally on parking, the club has also committed to help finance 2 traffic warden posts on match days as well, to ensure effective enforcement of parking orders in the area, our police, for want of a better phrase. Just touching on comments regarding the consultation exercise, I think in terms of pre-consultation engagement, I think this really has been an absolute exemplar scheme of how you want to see an applicant engage with not just the council but the wider community. The club literally went door to door knocking in the area. There's been leaflet drops. There's been numerous public consultation engagement exercises that many of you may have seen or even attended. I think it's only fair to say honestly do not believe the club could have done more to either publicise their proposals or engage with anyone that may have an interest in the proposed developments of Villa Park. So, and in terms of the advertisement of this actual application, obviously we've gone through all the statutory and our constitution processes. I think I personally put up 7 site notices in the local area. It's been well advertised, and you can see the interest in the local media as well. So I think in all good faith, anybody that has wanted to engage with this process has had the opportunity to do so, or it's certainly been made available for them to do so. So I do commend the club and their agency for that. So as you'll see in the report, in terms of conclusion, yes, there is issues at the moment. We believe that even with the uplift in spectator numbers this proposal will bring, that this development will actually see betterment in the short and longer term through the application nature itself, but the package of measures that will now be brought in place to help deal with getting people to and from the ground that currently doesn't exist.
And Councillor Moore, are you still wishing to?
Just I wanted a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
The commitments that you say Aston Villa are on, are those contained within conditions so that they're actually required? Therefore, a lot of the mitigation suggested may be lost. Make sure that those are conditioned within there to make sure they're retained. Or if they want to change them, that we have some say.
What you're saying, does that actually reflect a fairly uniform view that's been expressed by the committee? Some of the issues are not necessarily directly related to the planning application before us, but I hope not only planning officer, but other officers of the City Council will take into account the comments that committee members have made. If it's possible to, in any way, strengthen the conditions to reflect some of the concerns
Well, in terms of conditions, these are pre first use, so they need to be agreed before they can actively use it. That will involve, as I say, consultation with relevant local members, chair committee if so desired, and there's no issue with that. And I think it's fair to say that the club is aware of the issues and wants to resolve it itself. It wants the biggest thing that's really fed back to them is their own supporters. But there's an issue, we need to improve things. So if we look at it very coldly, fans are seen as customers these days. Aston Villa want to make sure their customers are happy. So it's not in their interest to renege on anything they've offered. These are part of, I think, appropriately worthy conditions. And let's be briefly honest on this. It may not be too long in the future. We're coming back for further development here. I honestly don't think Aston Villa are going to act in bad faith, knowing they may have a phase 2 or phase 3 or a bid, and then renege on things that they've committed to. And then some of these things have been offered up without officers requesting them or pushing for them. And as I said, just in terms of some of the things you mentioned, can we have them now? Aston Villa are committing to doing that even before this application has been determined, and introducing those from January with the Premier League season restarting.
Thank you. In putting the recommendations to you, I mean, I do actually think we should commend the the efforts that the club has gone to in terms of the public consultations, and notwithstanding concerns that we've all got about transportation issues, I think we all very much welcome this in terms of the to the ground and the importance of it in terms of our sporting heritage for the city. Can I move the recommendations in paragraph 9? All those in favour? Votes in favour? No votes against. That committee has approved the recommendation with the conditions listed in the report. Very much. Now to item 8, which is the land at Langley. Sutton Coldfield. Rearrange themselves and then I'll.
Just introduce John Hyatt from PGA, who is our transport consultant for the council. There's a number of updates just to go through. There's one further neighbour letter received raising comments with regards to the accelerated funding of the highways contribution to enable early implementation of the identified measures. Details of the timings of the works to the M42 Junction 9 and M6 Junction 5, and the phasing of the transport contributions. There's also an additional representation from West Midlands Police, again reiterating their request for a financial contribution. We have had several discussions regarding the acceptability of that contribution, and the council's position is that it doesn't meet the SILTEC in terms of a contribution. The main reasons for this are the centralised model for police funding makes it difficult to demonstrate a clear link between the request and the proposed development. And therefore the requested increase in staff and equipment isn't considered to be fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the proposal. Also, the specific obligations, including patrol vehicles, have an 8-year lifespan in terms of those vehicles, and given the length and time of phasing of the development, some of those vehicles can be directly associated with the development. And also the contributions that have been asked in terms of officer costs and training, as well as the patrol vehicles, aren't considered to align with the definition of infrastructure as envisioned by the relevant planning policies. Other updates, there was a table missing at paragraph 7171 in terms of the affordable housing tenures. They are proposed to be social rent 4%, affordable rent and rent to buy 6%, affordable ownership options at 16.25%, and first homes at 8.75%, totaling the 35% affordable housing across the site. Also an update at paragraph 1.177 in terms of the total highways contribution. There's still ongoing talks in terms of the indexation review of the amount. But it's considered the finished amount should be somewhere between 35 and 38 million pounds. There is also, in terms of the parameter plans shown, they are a slightly old amendment, and there has been slight change just in terms of the red line. Finally, just to confirm, the resolution to grant permission subject to section 106 includes the delegated authority for Birmingham City Council to enter into a legal agreement in order to facilitate accelerated funding for one or more of the section 106 items or funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate my previous comments I made at the pre-app in terms of the connectivity. I appreciate the commitment to improving walking, cycling. That does make sense, but this is on the very edge of the city. It is considerable distance from the city centre. Only the die-hard cyclist I can imagine will cycle all that way. No one cycles to the local town centre, but it is a long distance, and therefore there is going to be an dependence on the car. As it's drive to try and reduce that, which is going to fail miserably, because you can have people on the edge of the city who are may not even look to the city in terms of their transport needs. They may travel to Lichfield and Camden, as I know from my friends and family that live in Suncold already. That is what they do. They don't come into Birmingham city centre. They go out of the city. They don't by car because the public transport is what's needed. And I suspect they won't improve significantly to cater for these 6,000 houses on there. And if we don't cater for that now, it's only going to be worse. New developments in my own ward, obviously on a much smaller scale. But the parking provision for that is inadequate. There are substantial on-street parking, like on Abbeyfields, on Erdington Gardens, cars on the council board would. And we're building, 6,000 houses here. That's going to be an awful lot of on-street parking if we think no one's going to own a car. So I do think there needs to be a bit of a rethink when we come to the reserve matters sections on this to make sure we plan for that. And if everyone decides they don't want a car, that's great, that's lovely. But I'd rather have a situation where people are having empty driveways than having lots of cars cluttering up the pavement. The implications that has for pedestrians and cyclists, because we just assume that they love their car. So I do hope that can be addressed in the reserve matters phases for the individual parts.
Marshall.
Yeah, so there's currently a national housing crisis, and as a city, we need to build more homes. So this scheme will build thousands of family homes and nearly 2,000 of them affordable. So new schools, leisure and sport facilities, green space. I think it's a proposed sprint bus route for Sutton city centre. So I think it'll make it a great place to live.
Yes, Barry.
Highlighted in terms of the consultation that the elements of consultation led by Birmingham City Council has been absolutely atrocious. The idea that you can somehow dump sort of 400 documents on planning online relating to a development that is part of the Birmingham plan, which merited an awful lot of consultation, and expect residents to not only read it, understand it, but respond with intelligent comments is ridiculous. And I think it's a great shame, bearing in mind the size of this development, which is basically a small town, that we couldn't have spent more time talking to our residents about it. I really hope that in the future that Birmingham City Council is not missing in action and happens to explain to residents how this fits into a Birmingham plan, which is, of course, their own. I mean, I would say finally, that the word exemplar is often used in the report. I think we really do need to define what exemplar actually means if we're expecting applications to fit in with that. We would certainly expect every application to show what they actually mean by exemplar, or at least have some working definition of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Payne.
Chair. To sort of reiterate what's already been mentioned by a couple of councillors already. Yes, we do absolutely need lots and lots of housing in a major city within the country, and I welcome that. I do have reservations, two main areas. Again, it's already been mentioned, but the parking. If we've got 6,000 properties, it's reasonable to assume that most properties nowadays would have at least one car at that property, and that's a lot of parking, and that would spread out onto street scene around the area. Also, we've been quite close to main routes into the likes of Lichfield and Tamworth. It's possible that it might take away some of the business into the city, into the smaller towns in that area beyond the north of Sutton Coldfield. So I just have those reservations, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. I want to also repeat comments about parking. If public transport is not provided to a level that the residents expect, they will own cars and they will park them. And it's a bit short-sighted to think that if we don't provide parking spaces, then they'll just find some other way to travel. But beyond that, I want to comment on the affordable homes. It's very pleasing to see that this development meets the target. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before I bring planning officer back? Okay. Both of you.
Just to comment on the public transport, and Councillor mentioned it as well, there is a large-scale public transport offer that to improve this area of the city, which eventually is proposed at the moment to be a sprint route with a cross cross-city bus scheme in the interim. So and we have emphasised throughout the process of dealing with the developers that there needs to be a public transport offer from the first house so that people don't decide to get in their cars and go somewhere else. So yeah, public transport alongside active travel is a key part of the transport strategy.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on that in terms of obviously there's obviously concerns about the amount of trips and parking and how movements are going to take place, and it is a balance between obviously encouraging sustainable modes whilst making sure we cater for existing car use and how it comes trying to make the most sustainable methods the best methods, the easiest methods for people, so in trying to encourage them away from the car and make it as easy as possible to use those facilities. We have had extensive discussions regarding that in terms of promoting that, and that is entwined in terms of the transport assessment and the details that have come forward. Certainly segregation of those uses and trying to encourage those methods. In terms of parking, ultimately that would be for reserve matters stage, but we have had initial discussions about the balance of parking and how it's going to work across the site. Obviously, it is, again, we don't want to over provide, but there is that sort of sweet spot, as it were, in terms of providing enough for family houses and the type of people that are going to make those trips. Obviously, as well, we're encouraging the use of electric vehicles, so electric charging points to each of the properties as well, with on-plot parking. So in terms of the council's parking provisions, it would be somewhere in line with the documents that would already be on our website, and we would obviously review that as it comes forward in terms of the reserve matters and how it's developing across the site, to make sure that there isn't issues in terms of on-street parking in respect of that. In terms of consultation, in terms of development, the developer has obviously done a certain amount of their own consultations in terms of promoting the site and doing pre-applications and shows in terms of showing what's coming forward in terms of the development. From the council's point of view, we've done the statutory terms of consultations, obviously site notices and letters out to the residents. Also speaking with the local ward members in terms of moving forwards. I've offered myself, and so has the applicant, in terms of attending future meetings with the local councils and groups as well to explain schemes moving forward. And I would expect, as new applications and the reserve matters come forward, that we'd have more interaction in terms of that and trying to disseminate a lot of the information, which is very dense. There's certainly lots of a development this scale for any normal person to work their way through, and we appreciate that. So moving forward, that's certainly something we'd like to implement with local people. In terms of the exemplar elements of the scheme, obviously within our policy, it's very much promoted as an exemplar, one of a kind sort of scheme moving forwards, and the applicant has submitted points in terms of meeting that exemplar status, which would be conditioned as part of this application to meet. And we would certainly be looking for very high standards in terms of the design codes moving forwards and how the development's going to look, and pushing that boundary beyond the standard type large house builder developments. The only thing was the affordable homes, and in terms of the split that's been agreed, in terms of 10 years, that's been agreed with our internal affordable housing officer, and the intention is across the site to provide those affordable homes, which is obviously a significant benefit of the development and will go a long way to meeting shortfall in that area. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Moore, you're indicating, is it a further question on?
It was the issue of connectivity out of Birmingham wasn't touched on. So I mentioned Lichfield and Town, but there's obviously North Warwickshire as well. So what's going to be done to improve connectivity of the site, not just with Birmingham and South Coalfield, but out of Birmingham, given its proximity on the edge?
If you can.
Yeah, sorry. So we appreciate that not all trips will be by public transport. So some trips will be by car. And that is why access has been given directly onto the A38, so that the people of Sutton Coalfield aren't impacted by rat running. And a large part of the transport strategy is around limiting the impact on on those modes. There's on those people. Sorry. There are also proposals as part of the public transport strategy for a demand responsive transport service that is linked to Peddingmore as well, and then goes out into North Warwickshire to enable some of those trips, and looking at active transport lanes possible. Also, we've mentioned Lichfield links into the Cross City line as well in Sutton Coldfield, so people can make those trips by modes as much as possible.
Thank you. I'm going to put the recommendations to committee. The recommendations are in paragraph 9. All those in favour? Ten votes in favour, no votes against. That application is approved. Report number 9 on Crosskeys, Erdington is withdrawn. So we're therefore on to item 10, the report on the Brook Hill Tavern. In fact, although on the next 2 reports are on the same, relate to the same site, so I'm going to take discussion on both those at the same time, though obviously the voting will be separate. Can I ask the officer for any updates on this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have an update. We need to add 2 additional restricting conditions. Due to the arrangement of the residential accommodation, which is outlined within the report, it is suggested that we add a condition to restrict the man's accommodation to that use and not to be used as independent accommodation. Likewise, the first and second floor visitor accommodation within the community centre shall be used as ancillary accommodation to the community use. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any questions or comments from members on this report? Councillor Marsham, then Councillor Ahmed.
What's that to really good design?
Councillor Ahmed?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've had a look at the report, and I think the previous book was a bit of an eyesore. I also had a design of the new proposals, and I believe that it's very contemporary and got hand in hand with the new builds across the road. I think it's school. And I think the officers have carried out due diligence, and I will be supporting this application.
I want to say that I've had a look at the pictures of the building, and I think it's a nice contemporary build. And I think it would benefit this building because it's been derelict for a very long time. And I think it would be a good thing for the community for that area.
Sorry, Councillor Payne, I do apologise.
Thank you, Chair. Again, what's impressed me is the fact that they've taken into consideration the need for parking, and this basement plan obviously shows it's a plan there for parking, which is very good to see. And I'm mindful to support that application.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived abroad, and the thing I like about this design, it's very reminiscent of I've told this to Councillor Brooks. It's very reminiscent of monuments at Tyne-Cart and places like that. I really love it. I think it's going to be an absolute added bonus to the area. Clearly, there's a need for it, which is another thing. And as Councillor Payne has just said, one of my bugbears, like all of us, is parking, because I live in an area where parking is of a premium. And I think it's good. It's everything's been looked at, and I think it's a definite goer, definitely.
Other questions or comments?
I just want to say that they've got something not similar to that, but in Cambridge, the mosque in Cambridge, and you get loads of people flooding to go to this mosque in Cambridge. It's nice contemporary design. So I'm really pleased with this design and I support it.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I think all those comments were positive, so thank you for that. The building has obviously been vacant, derelict for at least 12 years. been working with the architect for a couple of years now to try and get a design that we're happy with. And I think, as you say, it's a contemporary design. It fits in well. We've maximised virtually the whole site for basement car parking, getting as much car parking as we can. Obviously, the design, we've got the brick piers, which have been carefully thought about to give sort of articulation to the brick piers. We've got large amounts of glazing. About 30% of the building is covered with green roofs. So we've got green roofs, solar panels, air source heat pumps, a courtyard with an interesting water feature. So I think there's lots going on. I think it will be a significant contribution to the area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I see all those in favour of the recommendation? That's approved with 10 votes in favour, no votes against. Thank you very much. And then we move on to the second report on the Brook Hill Tavern, which relates to listed building consent. Any?
No, okay, thank you, Chair.
I think we could be happy to go straight to a vote on this one. All those in favour? 10 votes in favour, no votes against. That's approved. Thank you very much. We're coming on to item 12, which is the report on Aldi Selly Oak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one quick update on this one, Chair. I think some members may have had an email direct on behalf of the applicants just in support of the application. Having read the email, there's nothing additional to add to that. It's all covered in your report. So it's just for the public record. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak on this? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. I have very fond memories of this Aldi when I was a student. I used to go to it very frequently. So it's a very well used retail unit. So I'm not surprised it needs to expand to meet the growth in student demand in Selly Oak. So happy to support that. It's disappointing about the loss of the recreation ground. But there is compensation offered for that, which is a sizable amount. So I think it's a win-win for all, really. So,
thank you. Anyone else? It's not. I think the report makes clear the benefits in terms of the exchange of the recreation ground for further work to Selly Oak Park. So I think that's clear. We can put it to the vote. All those in favour? In favour? No votes against. That's approved. Any other urgent business? Have some more.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to follow up on the issue we raised at the last meeting about the letters not being sent out in time. Your brief update full is welcome. But just slightly concerned at the scale of the problem and how planning committee were kept in the dark on that until we asked questions. 8,000 letters is an awful lot of letters to not go out. I'm rather worried, how was this? I appreciate there's a briefing that's been circulated to explain how it's happened, but we as a committee have to have faith in the officers that the consultation is taking place correctly, because a lot of applications complain about lack of consultation. Now I'm just slightly mindful of, should we be dismissing those so quickly on the basis, given what's transpired? And I'm also concerned as to where the funding is going to be arranged, because I understand we're offering applicants affected to reapply for free. Where's the funding coming from that? Is that coming from external, or is it having to be met within the internal planning department budget? So I'd be rather worried if, say, less enforcement can take place to cover the costs of this error. And given the scale of the error, I certainly expected us to have been updated, to be notified that this has happened, and we should be mindful of that with any complaints we get from the public, any applications we have to consider.
Is it on the same issue, or?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, just very quickly, I've actually had a complaint from the resident on Anstey Road in King's Standing, and he has expressed very similar concerns to what Councillor Moore has just put forward. The short notice for the receipt of application, planning application notification, and also, what is going to happen now, A, to ensure that this doesn't happen again in the future, and B, with the applications that are in process, how is it going to be funded in the future to make sure that those applications can then go through the correct process?
I've just reviewed the briefing that was sent to us, and it's more a question of, because of the large scale of the numbers that we're looking at, why wasn't it flagged much earlier that this was an issue? And shouldn't issues like that be consistently? Because I'm sure that the one-off could be accepted as a possibility, as an admin error or a human error. But considering the large scale, I would think that we would have been told much earlier. I just want to know why that didn't happen earlier.
Sarah in on this.
Just making a note of that last one. Well, I'll start there. The reason why we found out relatively late in the process was because of the sheer number of letters we do actually send out. It's a large number. We're not in any denying that, but it's actually quite a small proportion of the overall number of applications we decide. So in the same period that this was happening, it affected 2 of our officers. There was 4 other officers who were sending out letters, and it was all working, and we were getting comments on applications, and in fact comments on some of the applications that were affected because of the different ways we notify people, putting site notices up, neighbours talking to each other, reconsultations and so on. So it wasn't obvious that it had happened at the start, but we do know why it happened, and it did go down to 2 officers whose print queues were unfortunately diverted to the wrong print queue. We now know that we didn't think that could happen. We weren't aware that that was an issue that could happen before. We're obviously now aware that it can happen. So we've put checks in place to ensure that we're checking every single day the number of letters that we generate in our system and the number of letters that go out from our digital mailroom. So the issue, we're confident that that issue won't happen again. We've identified the issue. We weren't aware that the issue could happen. We now know that it can. We're confident it won't happen again. In terms of how we're dealing with it going forward, we're dealing with it with the internal resource. We have offered people to resubmit free of charge, as in we haven't charged them a planning application fee for this resubmission. And that's on the basis that the council did make the mistake. It's an error on our part in terms of how we've run the statutory planning process. Officers have gone, I would say, above and beyond in terms of doing the work that they need to do to get around it. So we're covering that cost from internal resources. The letters, obviously, we did have to send a huge number of new letters out, so there's a cost there. But that isn't above and beyond our kind of budget that we have for posting. So we haven't asked then for any more money or using any more money at this stage. In terms of complaints, we've dealt with up to date 65 formal stage 1 complaints, and about 30 of those have gone on to stage 2. So my kind of advice to you, if anyone is approaching you with complaints, to send them my direction, or if they've received a letter, they will have a named person at the end of that letter and 3 telephone numbers and a named email address. They will all be captured and responded to personally with a review of the application that they're talking about. So if there is anyone who is concerned that they're not receiving the right response to some of their issues, then do put them my way. I've spoken to a number of people. I appreciate the concern from residents and also from applicants. We're trying to ensure that for applicants, we're getting into a place where they have a reduced risk of any sort of challenge on their applications. We're confident that in most cases, people are saying, yes, resubmit them, and we'll run the consultation process again. And where we haven't yet had that positive, we're talking to the neighbours and assuring them, going through the application with them to make sure we have covered what their complaint might be, or if not, why. I think that covers all questions.
Except why was we as a committee not told? Because basically we are the front-facing end of the service effectively. You know, people email the planning committee about various different concerns. So I was just very concerned I shouldn't have to find out from Birmingham identified as soon as it was identified that this is an issue, we should be aware of it. This is what we do to address it. The members of this committee find out that there's been a
I think the point on this is it's quite right that as members of this committee, as a committee as a whole, we need to have assurance regarding the integrity of the consultation process. Now, the letter that went to members was a very detailed letter, which actually indicated not only what the problem was, but what steps have been put in place to ensure that it didn't happen again. Now, and also how some of the applications that hadn't been dealt with in in the proper way in terms of consultation, how they would be addressed. Now, I'm reasonably confident that the what's been put in place will actually prevent the problem occurring again. I think what we do need in the future, or what we do need to understand, is how that process goes through in terms of the applications that are outstanding and how they're going to be dealt with. Now, I would say one thing, that we as a committee do not have political oversight in terms of the management of the department. That lies elsewhere in the council. We are as we say at every meeting, a quasi-judicial committee that considers applications that come before us. But clearly, we have a legitimate interest in, in the integrity of the consultation process. So I don't entirely accept that members were kept in the dark. I think it was important that we waited until it was absolutely clear what the issues were that were causing problems and how they were being addressed. And I think that did happen in the note to not only members of this committee but the political leaders as to what action was being taken. So I think that was quite rigorously done. And I'd hope that as this process goes on in terms of planning applications that are being resubmitted, that we continue to receive reports to give us assurance that that's being undertaken in a proper way. Councillor Deakin, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that I'm quite confident that the issues that have happened will be remedied. And I don't at all think that there was, committee members and the issue of the press. I think that it was perhaps an oversight to focus on a response to the press, less of an intention to not inform us, because if we were going to find out either way, I think, there was clearly no bad intention there. But I think that there is some learning to perhaps happen from this, in that when issues like this do arise, and perhaps if the department does receive a press request, actually before replying to that press request, that it's for the share that.
Okay, I'm not going to take any further comments from officers. I think the views of the committee have been well expressed on this. Urgent business. Can I perhaps take the opportunity to wish all members, officers and members of the public a very happy Christmas and a healthy and safe New Year. Thank you.